I'm making this tutorial on how to use walls to export the passage outlines from your SVG map to shapefiles because it's not super straightforward in the program or in the help. And the first time I tried to do it, all I got were LRUD polygons like this, and it took me a while to figure out how to get it to work, so I want to share that with you. So first of all, in your SVG file, you'll need to have these closed polygons in the W2D mask layer, like this. And I typically copy them over from the W2D walls layer. I copy those over and then I join all those walls up with the pencil tool to join them into a closed polygon anywhere I left the walls open for a lead or unfinished survey. And then you set a fill on that mask layer. And by the way, if you save a copy of an SVG file or you had it as an Illustrator file and you're converting it back to SVG, then in the options you'll need to make sure that you export the CSS properties as style attributes. I think style attributes as entity references also works, but that's deprecated. And I know for sure that these other options aren't supported by walls currently. That's something I'd like to fix in the future, but for now, make sure you're using style attributes. Okay, so the next step back in walls is you're going to want to have, if you don't have this already from round tripping, you're going to want to have an SVG file attached to your project tree. So to do that, we click New Item, set the type to Other, and then select the SVG file you want and add it to the tree. If you have multiple SVG files, make sure that you're only compiling a tree node with one attached, or detach all the ones you don't want. I think walls only processes the first one it finds in the subtree, so make sure of that. And now, just because we attach that file to this tree here, that doesn't mean it's been processed and included by walls yet. To see if it's been included, we open the passage options here, and you need to check this option that says if an SVG was processed during compilation, obtain passage outlines from mask layer, and also make sure the SVG outlines or LRUD polygons option is selected. And then you need to get the status to say SVG processing is enabled and process data is available. So to get it to be enabled, you go in your properties for the tree node, go to compile options, and then process source SVG if one is attached. So now it says SVG processing is enabled, but process data is still unavailable because that setting doesn't take effect until the next time this tree is compiled. So to do that, you right click on it and select Recompile Item. And you might have seen there briefly there was a dialog that says it's processing the SVG, and if anything goes wrong processing the SVG, you should see an error dialog pop up after that. But everything was good in this case. So now if we go back to the passage dialog here, it says process data is available. So now we're finally ready to export to our shapefile, and confusingly that is not in this export menu under the file menu. Instead you have to go to the segments tab here, select the segment you want because it's designed to only export a specific segment from your data to a shapefile, and then you click this details and reports and click subset export shapefiles. And finally, here's the export dialog you want. And you need to make sure that this wall outlines option is checked. It'll be disabled if it didn't get any polygons from the mask layer of your SVG, and it didn't get any, like you don't have any LRUDs in this tree of your project. But even if it is enabled, that could just mean it only got LRUDs from your project, and it's just going to export those LRUDs. So you can't tell from this dialog whether it's going to export the walls from your SVG or not, which is part of why it's really confusing. And that's why you have to check the status back in that passage options dialog. And if you've exported a file before, also make sure that you don't have that file open in your GIS program, because if you do, this export is going to fail, but the error message isn't going to be clear about what went wrong. So make sure it's not open. And then click export. If everything works, it'll say successfully created. We click OK, and now we should finally be able to import it into our GIS program. And you're looking for the _w.shapefile. That means walls. There's also like _v for vectors and so forth. So, and there we have our wall outlines from our SVG. So one thing that didn't work here though is there are columns and holes from my SVG that are missing from this export, and that's because I used a compound path in Illustrator to produce those holes, which I think is really the way it should be done, but Walls currently doesn't support doing it that way, which is something I hope to eventually fix. But the way David McKenzie designed Walls to do it was instead you have these separate individual polygons in your mask. You have one big outer polygon around your entire cave that's colored with the floor color you want for the fill. And then you have these separate inner polygons for your columns or holes with the same color as the background. I don't really think that's the proper way to do it, because then if you want to change your background color, you have to go through all of these and change their background color as well. That's not a problem with the compound path, but anyway, that's the way you've got to structure it right now if you want it to export those correctly. And just to show you that that works, if I open the shapefile export for that project in here, it should come up as we want. So, yeah, like so. Well, actually though, you can see there's actually a bug where some of those don't, they're incorrectly getting filled in. I think, as far as I know, in shapefiles, these holes have to have like the vertices in the opposite clockwise, counterclockwise order as the outer polygon, and Walls probably isn't exporting them in the correct order, so that's another bug I'll hopefully manage to fix in the near future. But anyway, that's how you do it. And keep in mind, everything is relative to like which book or subtree of your project that you're compiling. So if you have different SVGs and different project subtrees, then only the subtree you compiled, like only its SVGs, well, SVG will show up in the shapefile export. I don't think it supports, I don't think if you have multiple SVG files in the same tree, I don't think it currently just automatically merges those together right now. I haven't checked, but I doubt it. But if not, that's another nice feature that I hope to eventually add in the future. So, and also, of course, I want to try to help make the UI better at guiding everyone through this process. You know, make this dialog here say if it's going to be exporting Walls from your SVG, and if not, what setting to go change, and so forth, as well as updating the help files some more. So anyway, I'm still getting my feet wet with the Walls code base though, so until then, make sure you follow the steps in this video, and if you have any problems, feel free to comment below and I'll try to help out. And if it worked, please share it with any of your friends who use Walls. All right, y'all. Cheers and happy cartography.